Why didn't she move? Why, when the radio crackled with orders to withdraw, did Avery Morgan remain perfectly still, her cheek pressed against the rifle stock, her breathing steady, her finger brushing the trigger? The target below stepped into the open, framed between two buildings inside the compound. The man was responsible for the deaths of 23 American soldiers. For days she had been watching him, memorizing his patterns, the way he barked at his guards, the careless way he walked between shadows. Now he was in the open, a perfect shot. But the order in her ear was firm. Mission scrubbed, pull back, leave him alive. Her pulse slowed instead of quickened. That was always her way. The tighter the pressure, the calmer she became. She didn't answer the radio, didn't blink. She exhaled once, slow, like her old neighbor James Harrison had taught her when she was 12, waiting on a hillside with a hunting rifle. The shot cracked across the valley. And in that instant, she knew there would be consequences. But 7 years earlier, she hadn't been a sniper staring through glass at a man who deserved death. She had been a daughter, just a daughter coming home to Nevada, thinking maybe for once she could breathe. The desert air was sharp with sage that morning, heat rising off the empty roads. She drove the last stretch toward her childhood home, her posture stiff even in the truck seat. At 28, Avery carried herself like someone still in formation. Back straight, eyes scanning, always alert. Some habits never leave the body once the military brands them into you. The house looked the same as when she left 6 years ago. Paint peeling. The old shop her father had built standing tired beside it, garage doors closed in the middle of a workday. That wasn't right. Robert Morgan never closed shop in daylight. She parked, and before she reached the porch, the door opened. Her mother stepped out. Catherine Morgan, older now, her face worn with the lines that come from worry more than age. She reached for Avery, holding on as if afraid her daughter might vanish if she let go. "Thank God you're here." Something in her mother's voice froze Avery where she stood. "What's going on, Mom? Where, Dad?" The answer came with tears. Inside, in the living room that smelled faintly of oil and desert dust, her father lay in a hospital bed. The strong man who had raised her, Gulf War veteran mechanic, the one who taught her what grit really meant, looked smaller than she ever thought possible. His chest rose with effort. His eyes flickered open when she knelt beside him. "There's my girl," he rasped, as if her presence alone allowed him to fight a little longer. She squeezed his hand. "Dad, why didn't you tell me how bad it was?" "What good would that have done? You had your duty." Even sick, his grip tightened. "But now I need you here. I need you to promise me something." And in those hours that followed, he laid it all bare. The shop drowning in debt, the banks circling like vultures, a local businessman pressuring them to sell. Her 19-year-old brother Jason sick, doctors saying surgery was the only option, costs towering higher than they could ever reach. Her father's eyes, dim but unyielding, locked on hers. "The shop kept us together. It can still provide for this family, but it needs someone strong, someone who can fight. Jason's smart, but he's not you. Promise me, Avery, promise me you'll keep this family together." She wanted to scream that she didn't know how, that she wasn't built for oil-stained tools and bank ledgers. But she saw the truth in his eyes and the shadow of finality hovering in the room. "I promise, Dad," she whispered. 3 days later, Robert Morgan was gone. The funeral drew faces from all over the county, men and women who spoke of a mechanic who had fixed their trucks when they couldn't pay, a veteran who still carried pride in the flag despite what it had cost him. Avery stood among them with her mother and Jason, feeling the weight of a promise she already feared she couldn't keep. And then she saw him. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Blackwood, her old commanding officer, the kind of leader soldiers remembered not for his rank, but for how he carried himself in the dust of deployment. He spoke softly, respectfully. He'd come not just to honor her father, but to offer her something, not condolences, opportunity. The Navy SEALs. not in the traditional sense. A specialized training program, a need for people who didn't think like everyone else, who saw patterns others missed, who could endure without breaking. "You've got those qualities, Morgan," he told her, the Nevada sun hot against the polished stones around them. "The program pays well, medical benefits too, the kind that would cover your brother's surgery." The words sank deeper than any bullet wound she'd ever felt. Jason's surgery, her mother's voice cracking with worry, the bank letters piling up. Her father's voice echoing even from the grave, "Promise me." That night on the porch, her neighbor came. James Harrison, 70 years old, slower in step but still sharp as a rifle sight. The man who had taught her patience in the hills, who had first put a gun in her hands and told her it was more about waiting than shooting. He listened as she explained Blackwood's offer, the conflict clawing inside her, family obligations, the shop, her father's promise. James leaned back, eyes on the desert horizon. "Your father asked you to keep the family together. He didn't say how. The shop was his way, but maybe your way is different." She shook her head. "I don't know if I'm SEAL material." A small smile. "Patience, Avery. That's what I saw in you when you were 12, sitting still when others couldn't last 10 minutes. That's rarer than strength, rarer than speed. Don't underestimate it." His words lingered as the night deepened. The desert sky above them endless, stars burning like silent witnesses. The next morning, she dialed the number Blackwood had given her. 4 weeks later, she was at Coronado. The salt air sharp, the sound of waves a constant backdrop. 31 men stood with her, taller, broader, stronger, each carved from years of preparing for this crucible. She was the only woman. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez introduced himself with a voice like gravel. "Welcome to Bud S. I'll be your worst nightmare and your only hope." The numbers didn't lie. Only 1 in 5 would make it. The stairs told their own story, some curious, some doubtful, some openly hostile. When one of them, Marcus Ellis, son of an admiral, called her presence a social experiment, Avery only replied with calm certainty, "I guess we'll see." The days that followed blurred into pain, endless swims, runs until her lungs burned, obstacle courses that shredded her hands. She wasn't the strongest, she wasn't the fastest, but she was patient, controlled, unwavering. And then came the first test of what she carried inside. The marksmanship range. Where others rushed, she breathed slow. Where others twitched under pressure, her hands were steady. Each shot was precise, deliberate, as if every target was a memory of the desert hills, with James Harrison's voice reminding her, observation first, action second. When the instructor announced she had the highest scores of the day, a murmur rippled through the group. Ellis scowled. For the first time, some of the others looked at her not as an outsider, but as competition. That night a letter arrived from home, her mother's words trembling across the page. Jason's condition worse. Surgery needed soon. Costs rising beyond anything they could imagine. Avery folded the letter carefully, tucking it close. It wasn't just paper. It was the weight of her father's promise pressing harder against her chest. She knew one truth then, with the kind of certainty that cuts deeper than fear. She couldn't afford to fail. Not here, not ever. Why had her compass been tampered with? She turned it over in her hand under the dim barracks light, seeing the faint scuff marks along the housing. At first glance it looked fine, functional even. But she noticed the truth. The needle didn't settle quite right. A subtle sabotage. The kind that wouldn't be caught until it dragged her miles off course. Ellis, it had to be him. But instead of reporting it, Avery simply placed the broken compass aside and slipped her backup into her gear. If Ellis thought this would be her undoing, he'd learned something about patience, about the quiet power of endurance. The next morning, under a rising California sun, Chief Rodriguez laid out the rules for the land navigation exercise. 5 checkpoints, 8 hours, 40-pound packs on their backs. The terrain would test them, and instructors would be hunting them like prey. Miss a checkpoint, you fail. Get spotted, you're penalized. Understand this, speed alone won't save you. Candidates shot nervous glances at each other. Ellis wore his smirk like armor. When the whistle blew, the group scattered. Some ran hard, eager to beat the clock. Avery studied the map, plotted her route, then began slow, careful steps. Her body wanted to sprint with the others. Her mind knew better. Patience, always patience. Through brush and dust, across ridges and ravines, she moved like a shadow, each step chosen, each pause deliberate. At the first checkpoint, she spotted them, instructors lying in wait, concealed near the marker, eyes scanning for careless movements. She crouched, waited. 10 minutes. 20. She noted the rhythm of their scanning, the slight lag when one adjusted his position, and then she slipped through, invisible. She wrote down the code, heart steady, and vanished again into the brush. Hours passed. The sun burned high overhead. Sweat stung her eyes, her legs screamed under the pack, but still she moved slow, deliberate, always watching. At the fourth checkpoint, voices carried across the ridge. She froze. Ellis and another candidate appeared, close enough that she could see the cocky tilt of his head as he spoke. She must have had a backup, he muttered, frustration curling through his words. Doesn't matter. No way she finishes in time. She's moving like a snail. They passed within 20 feet of her, never seeing her pressed low against the rock. When they were gone, she exhaled, a breath of quiet victory. By the time she reached the final checkpoint and returned to base, her body ached with exhaustion. She arrived with only 15 minutes left on the clock. Rodriguez studied her verification codes, his face unreadable. Cutting it close, Morgan. Yes, Chief. You realize most candidates prioritize speed. I prioritized not being seen, Chief. Both objectives were part of the mission brief. For a moment his eyes lingered on hers, and then he called to another instructor, showing her record sheet. She's the only one who wasn't spotted, not once, out of 32. Word spread fast. That night in the mess hall, heads turned when she walked in, not with mockery this time, with respect. Quiet nods. Even Thompson, the soft-spoken Special Forces veteran, leaned across the table. That was impressive. How'd you do it? Avery shrugged. Observation, patience. My neighbor taught me when I was a kid. The environment always tells you how to move if you listen long enough. Thompson nodded slowly. Then he taught you well. Not everyone was convinced. Ellis approached, his expression tight, voice edged with venom. Quite the performance, he sneered. But don't get comfortable. You're out of your depth. The physical demands will break you sooner or later. Avery met his gaze with calm. Then we'll see. He stormed off, leaving tension in his wake. That night, as the barracks went dark, Avery unfolded a letter from James Harrison. His handwriting shook, but the words steadied her. Your mother says you're doing well. I'm proud of you. Remember, patience is a hunter's greatest weapon. Anyone can be fast or strong. Few understand how to wait, how to watch. Trust those instincts. They'll carry you further than brute strength ever will. She folded it carefully, tucked it into her chest pocket like armor, and closed her eyes. The days bled into weeks. The training pressed harder. One exercise placed her in a 4-man team with Cooper, Thompson, and Rivera, a force recon Marine with more brawn than caution. Their task: infiltrate a simulated compound, retrieve intelligence, and get out without detection. Rivera's plan was immediate, aggressive. We split, diversion east side, extraction west, fast and loud. Avery shook her head. They'll expect that. We need to observe first. Watch patrols, see the gaps. Rivera scoffed. We don't have time for games. This isn't a bird-watching trip. But Cooper and Thompson backed her. We've seen her methods work, Cooper said. We'll try it her way. So they watched. An hour passed. 2. Rivera shifted impatiently, but Avery kept her eyes fixed on the compound. And then she saw it. The 3-minute gap in the north fence during guard changes. The blind spot where a camera was angled wrong. The roving patrol that moved with clockwork timing. There, she whispered, that's our window. When they finally moved, it was like ghosts slipping through cracks. No alarms, no detection. Precision and patience carried them through. When they returned, their team was the only one never spotted. Rodriguez demanded an explanation. Avery laid it out simply: timing, patterns, patience. Morgan showed you how to move like ghosts, Rodriguez told the others. That's a skill that saves lives. From then on, even Rivera looked at her differently, respect replacing doubt. But Ellis only grew colder, his barbs sharper, his need to see her fail more desperate. Then came the talk of Hell Week. The words carried through the barracks like a ghost story. 5.5 days of no sleep, cold, pain, endless punishment. It broke even the strongest. One evening, Blackwood appeared, quiet as a shadow at her side. You ready for what's coming? As ready as I can be, sir. He studied her face, his voice low. You were chosen for a reason, not just your marksmanship. I saw something in you once in Afghanistan. Everyone else grew more frantic under pressure. But you slowed down. You grew calmer. That's rare. That's why you're here. She swallowed hard. What kind of missions, sir? The kind that require extraordinary patience, precision, the kind where conventional operators fail. The word steadied her and weighed on her all the same. Because that night, a call came from home. Her mother's voice cracked through the line. Jason was worse. Doctors demanded immediate surgery, costs mounting, the bank pressing harder. Avery closed her eyes against the sting. Hold on, Mom, please, just hold on, I'll fix this. When she hung up, the choice screamed at her. Quit and go home, be by her brother's side, maybe lose the shop forever, or stay, endure, earn the one thing that could keep her family afloat. There was no right answer, only the one that hurt less. As she stepped out into the night air, Ellis was there, the smirk waiting. Family trouble, Morgan. Hell Week starts tomorrow. No shame in quitting before you break. Her jaw tightened. I'm not going anywhere. He leaned close. We'll see. The brass bell waited on the beach. A symbol. Ring it and you walked away forever. But as Avery lay in her bunk that night, staring at the ceiling, she whispered the promise again, the one she had made over her father's dying hand. I won't ring that bell. Whatever Hell Week brought, she would endure it, not for herself, not even for the SEALs. For Jason, for her mother, for the man who had taught her patience in the desert. And for a father who believed she could keep them together, even when the world threatened to break them apart. The crash of waves at 4 a.m. was her only warning. Shouts, gunfire, boat horns, instructors storming the barracks like demons at the gates. On your feet, move it to the beach. Hell Week had begun. Why did the cold bite so deep? Why did it feel less like water and more like knives carving into her skin? The surf clawed at her as she and the others crawled through sand and salt, instructors screaming above the roar of waves. It was barely dawn, and already every nerve screamed. Up-down push-ups in the surf move. Salt burned her eyes. Her body shivered so hard her teeth rattled. This was only the first hour. Of the 32 candidates who had started the program, only 18 had made it this far. By the end of Hell Week, fewer still would remain. Chief Rodriguez's voice cut through the chaos, steady and merciless. This week won't break your bodies. It will break your minds. Your bodies can endure more than you believe. Your minds will quit first. A brass bell gleamed on its stand at the edge of the beach. One ring and the nightmare ended. Warm beds, hot food, and dignity surrendered. The temptation was always there, whispering. By mid-morning, the first candidate stumbled toward it, tears streaking his face as he rang out. The hollow clang echoed over the sand. 1 down, 17 left. Avery's muscles already trembled from exhaustion, her lips blue with cold. She forced her mind elsewhere, not on her pain, not on the bell. She pictured Jason, her brother's smile if surgery saved him, her mother's relief if the shop survived, her father's voice, "Promise me." That promise was fire. It burned hotter than the cold. Hours blended into one another. Rubber boats heaved overhead, 7 men per crew carrying over 200 pounds across sand and surf. Her smaller frame felt it worst. Shoulders screamed. Arms nearly buckled. The log PT came next. Massive timbers carried, lifted, pressed, and dragged until her hands blistered raw. And Ellis's voice was there, cutting through the agony. "She's slowing us down. She can't handle it." The instructor's eyes locked on her. "Morgan, is he right? Is this too much for you? No shame in knowing your limits." Her lungs burned, her arms trembled. The bell seemed louder than the ocean. But Ellis's smirk lit a different fire. "I can hold it, sir," she rasped. "Prove it." She adjusted her grip, locked her jaw, and forced the weight higher. Cooper caught her eye, gave the smallest nod. Subtly, he shifted his stance, redistributing the burden. Thompson mirrored him. Together, they bore the log forward. When the evolution ended, every muscle in her body shook, but she hadn't quit. That night, in the brief minutes of rest they were allowed, Rodriguez approached as she wolfed down an energy bar, hands trembling with fatigue. Most candidates would have quit back there. "What keeps you going?" She met his gaze, her voice hoarse. "A promise." "To who?" "My father before he died." Rodriguez studied her, something like respect flickering in his hard eyes. "Family promises are powerful. Just don't confuse breaking your body with honoring them. Know the line." She nodded, though in her heart she knew she would bleed past every line if that's what it took. Day 2 blurred with endless motion. Paddling boats through pounding surf. Running drills in sand that swallowed every step. Instructors barking, waves crashing, muscles tearing under relentless weight. But Avery had begun to see something others missed. The ocean had rhythm, sets of waves, patterns between chaos. Where others fought the water, she waited, counted, and timed. "Not yet," she whispered to her crew as they prepared to charge into the surf with their boat. "Wait for the 7th wave, then go." They listened, and when she gave the word, they surged forward during the brief lull. While others capsized, battered by walls of water, her team slipped beyond the breakers. Efficiency born not of strength, but observation. Even the instructors noticed. Later, as they dragged their boat ashore, Rodriguez gave her a curt nod. "You read the ocean, smart." Not everyone followed her lead. Ellis refused. He mocked her wave counting, led his team headlong into the surf, and paid the price. The boat flipped. Men scattered. And Avery saw him thrashing in a rip current, his arrogance stripped away, panic taking its place. No one noticed but her. She didn't think, she just dove. The current yanked hard, but she reached him, grabbed his arm. "Stop fighting it," she shouted over the roar, parallel to shore. Exhausted, he obeyed. Together they angled out, breaking free of the current before angling back. When they staggered to shore, coughing seawater, no one clapped. No one even saw, and Ellis said nothing. That was fine, she hadn't done it for him. Day 3. Sleep deprivation blurred the world. Less than 4 hours of rest since it began. Thoughts slowed. Muscles rebelled. Every step was war. Still, evolutions came. Tactical drills. Leadership rotations. Candidates forced to plan missions while their bodies screamed for sleep. When Ellis's turn came, he pushed his team hard, demanding speed they didn't have left. They failed. When Avery's turn came, she chose patience, conservation, observation, move when the patrol's back is turned, rest when the shadows fall. The team not only succeeded but finished with energy to spare. Rodriguez called it out during debrief. Sometimes leadership means knowing your limits, not charging past them. Avery nodded silently. She didn't need praise, she just needed to survive. That night the most dreaded test arrived, the night swim. 2 miles in open ocean, in the dark, alone. The cold was suffocating. The black water stretched endless. She forced her body into rhythm, strokes steady, mind calculating currents, stars, bearings. Halfway through, she spotted a figure floundering. Thompson, his movements erratic, panic rising. She angled toward him, knowing the cost. Helping him meant slower progress, risk of failure, maybe both of them failing. But the memory of her father's voice came sharp. The value of a person isn't what they can do for themselves. It's what they do for others. She swam beside him. Match my pace, stay with me. You'll fail if you help me. We're not leaving anyone, keep moving. Every stroke after that burned deeper. Her limbs grew heavy, lungs desperate. But she dragged him with her. Together they reached the buoys, recorded codes, then clawed their way back toward the faint line of shore. When they collapsed on the sand, medical staff pulled Thompson aside, wrapping him in blankets. Rodriguez towered over her, his voice low. Why risk failing to help him? She forced herself to her knees, chest heaving. Because we're a team, Chief. Teams don't leave anyone. For a long moment he said nothing, then he nodded once. Get 20 minutes rest, then back in. 20 minutes. Enough time to feel the exhaustion sink like stone, enough to dream of ringing that bell. But when she rose again, shaking and broken, she kept going. Day 4. Her body was a machine running on fumes, but her mind stayed sharp. She noticed things, patrol rhythms, shifts in the instructor's tactics. Even as others stumbled, she adapted. By the final day, only 9 candidates remained. They were assigned one last mission: infiltrate, gather intelligence, exfiltrate undetected. Her team followed her plan, slow and deliberate, conserving every shred of strength. They succeeded where others faltered. When the sun finally rose on that last morning, they stood in a ragged line on the beach. Faces hollow, eyes sunken, uniforms soaked with salt and sand. Rodriguez looked at them, his voice steady for the first time all week. Candidates, you've survived Hell Week. Take pride in this. Few ever make it here. Avery's vision blurred as exhaustion claimed her, but inside, something burned clean. She hadn't quit. She hadn't rung that bell. Her father's promise held. And though her body shook with fatigue, her heart knew something deeper. She was becoming what they once said she never could. Why did the silence feel heavier than the shouts? For the first time in a week, no waves crashed over her, no instructors screamed in her face, no boots thundered against the sand. The barracks was still. Too still. Avery lay on her bunk, body wrapped in a dull ache that went bone deep. Every breath reminded her of bruised ribs, blistered feet, raw skin rubbed rawer still. But the silence wasn't peace. It was the quiet after a storm. A silence that dared them to believe they'd survived when more storms waited ahead. 9 candidates left. 9 shadows moving slow, haunted by the week that had nearly broken them. Cooper limped past her bunk, his grin weak but still there. Hell of a ride, huh? She almost laughed, though the sound came out dry. If that's what you call it. You held strong, he said, leaning against the frame. Stronger than most. It didn't feel like strength. It felt like emptiness filled only with stubborn fire. Thompson stopped too, nodding toward her. Wouldn't have finished that swim without you. You pulled me when I had nothing left. Her throat tightened. She hadn't thought about it since, just acted in the moment. Now the weight of it pressed heavier than before. You would have made it, I just reminded you. He didn't argue, just sat on the bunk across from hers, his silence louder than words. Ellis, of course, said nothing. He carried himself like Hell Week hadn't touched him, back straight, smirk intact. But Avery had seen the crack. She'd seen panic in his eyes when the ocean tried to claim him. That memory stayed tucked away, quiet leverage she never planned to use. Days blurred into recovery drills, medical checks, slow rebuilding of battered bodies. Their world shrank to the basics: eat, rest, heal, prepare. But it wasn't just about physical recovery. Something had shifted in the air. Where once they had looked at Avery with suspicion, now they looked with something else. Not admiration exactly. Not yet, but recognition. She had endured. When the instructors pushed them back into training cycles, the group moved tighter, smaller in number, sharper in focus. Every drill carried weight. Every mistake carried consequence. It was during one of those live-fire exercises that Rodriguez noticed her again. They were tasked with precision under pressure, shooting through narrow openings, timing with moving targets, accuracy under exhaustion. Most hit close, enough to pass. Avery hit center, over and over. Rodriguez stopped behind her, arms crossed, watching longer than usual. When the range went cold, he called her aside. "You ever think about sniper school?" She blinked. "No, Chief." "You should. You've got patience most don't. Steady hands, calm heart, that's rare. We can build muscle. We can't teach calm." She hesitated. "Wouldn't that pull me away from the others, away from teamwork?" Rodriguez shook his head. "Every team needs overwatch. The one who sees what no one else does. That role saves lives more than bullets ever will." The thought lingered. Sniper. The word carried weight. Precision, distance, responsibility. She thought of James Harrison, the patience he had drilled into her as a child. The hunts where silence spoke louder than action. The lessons that never left her. That night she wrote a letter to her mother. "Mom, I know I should be home. I know Jason needs me, but I need you to trust me. I'm doing this for him, for all of us. Every day I stay, I get closer to giving him the surgery he needs. Please hold on. Tell him to hold on." She folded the paper, tucked it in the outgoing mail stack, and prayed it wouldn't be the last she ever sent. Weeks stretched into months. The sniper path opened like a new world. They trained her in optics, ballistics, range-finding, camouflage. She learned to breathe with the earth, to slow her heart, to let hours pass without motion. "Observation first," the instructor drilled. "You're not hunters, you're ghosts. A hunter moves, a ghost waits." And she excelled, not because she was stronger, but because patience had always been her gift. Her first kill house exercise proved it. Others fired quickly, eager to finish. She held steady, studied each target, double-checked angles, then pressed the trigger with calm certainty. The feedback came crisp and undeniable. Every shot clean, every target neutralized. Rodriguez reviewed the tapes. "Morgan, you're not just good, you're instinctive. You'll save lives out there." Ellis overheard. His jaw tightened, fists clenched. Later in the locker room, his voice cut sharp. "You think this makes you better? You're just a tool, a propaganda piece. They'll throw you at the press the second they can." She met his sneer with quiet steel. "If that's what they think, fine. But when it counts, I'll be the one covering you, whether you like it or not." For once, he had no reply. The weeks marched on. Bonds grew. Cooper's humor lightened the darkest nights. Thompson's steady loyalty gave her strength. Even Rivera, once impatient, respected her calm. Slowly, the 9 that remained became a unit. But Ellis, he stayed apart, bitter, resentful, yet he didn't quit. And in that she found a strange respect too. He hated her, but he endured alongside her. Then came the night when everything shifted. Blackwood returned. His presence filled the classroom as they filed in, sitting straighter instinctively. He spoke of assignments, of specialization, of real-world deployments. "Graduation is near, but understand this: training is only the beginning. Out there, mistakes don't mean push-ups. They mean death. For you, for your brothers, for civilians caught in between." He paced, eyes sharp. "We're preparing a mission. You won't get details yet. Just know this: those selected will be tested in ways beyond anything you've faced." A murmur rippled. Avery felt her pulse slow. She already knew. Deep inside, she'd be among those chosen. That night, as she sat on her bunk, letter from her mother trembling in her hands, the words cut sharper than any blade. Jason's surgery is scheduled. The doctors want payment up front. I don't know how much longer I can fight the bank. Please, Avery, please tell me you're coming home. Her chest ached. The promise weighed heavier than armor. If she stayed, Jason might not make it. If she quit, the mission, the path, the sacrifice, all of it would be lost. Tears blurred the page. She folded it slowly, tucked it beneath her pillow, and whispered into the dark. Not yet, Mom, not yet, I have to finish this. The desert, the surf, the barracks, all of it faded as she lay back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Because she knew the truth now. The next time she shouldered her rifle, it wouldn't be training rounds on cardboard. It would be real. Real men, real danger, real consequences. And her patience, her calm, her silent resilience, it would be tested not on a range, but on a battlefield where shadows and lives bled together. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath, her father's voice echoing one last time. Promise me you'll keep this family together. She whispered back into the silence. I will, no matter what it takes. And somewhere beyond the walls of Coronado, the storm of her first mission gathered. Waiting for her. Why did the valley seem so calm? The village below was bathed in moonlight, lanterns flickering, shadows stretching long across dirt streets. From her perch on the ridge, Avery scanned through the scope, every breath measured, every nerve alert. The calm was a lie. She could feel it. The silence of a place waiting to explode. The SEALs whispered behind her, setting charges, checking weapons. She could sense their eyes flicking toward her when they thought she wouldn't notice, watching her, judging her, the only woman in a brotherhood built on fire and blood. She ignored them, kept her cheek pressed to the stock, adjusted her focus, searching. Movement. Two armed men slipped from a doorway, rifles slung, their steps too careful for villagers. Their pattern was deliberate, disciplined. Not farmers, not shepherds, fighters. She whispered into the comms, voice calm. 2 tangos, north side near the well, armed, watch your approach. The team leader acknowledged, his tone clipped but respectful. They shifted accordingly, unseen in the shadows. Minutes stretched like hours. Her scope swept, tracing windows, alleys, rooftops. Every detail mattered. The stray dog nosing trash, the curtain that fluttered without wind, the faint glint in an upper window, glass catching light where no glass should be. She slowed her breathing, adjusted her angle. There, a sniper, hidden but not well enough. Her finger rested against the trigger. She could end it. One breath, one shot, but she waited, watching his line of sight. He wasn't aimed at her. He was fixed on the SEALs below, their approach unknowingly under his glass. She whispered again. Sniper, 2nd floor, northeast building, don't move into the open. The SEALs froze, adjusted, slipped back into cover. Patience, always patience. She tracked him through the scope, waiting for the angle. The moment his head tilted forward, peering, she exhaled slow. The rifle cracked. The man folded silently behind the window, never knowing who had ended him. The radio crackled, confirmed target down. No cheers, no praise, just quiet acknowledgement, but she felt the shift subtle like gravity realigning. They knew now. She wasn't there as a token. She was there because she belonged. Hours later, the team exfiltrated under cover of darkness. Mission complete. Intel gathered, no casualties. Back at base, the debrief was short. Blackwood himself had flown in, his presence commanding the room. Solid work, he said, scanning the faces. His eyes lingered on Avery, especially Overwatch. That rooftop sniper could have changed the outcome. Ellis spoke before anyone else could. One lucky shot doesn't prove anything. The room went still. Cooper's jaw tightened. Thompson's eyes narrowed. But Blackwood's gaze cut sharp. I was there when she put that round downrange, Ellis. There was nothing lucky about it. Don't let your pride blind you to skill. Ellis's mouth snapped shut. That night in the mess, as trays clattered and voices murmured, Thompson leaned toward her. You saved us out there. They can say what they want, but they know it. She only nodded, keeping her expression even. Praise never sat easy with her. It wasn't about being seen. It was about being true to the promise she carried. Still, the nickname started quietly. A whisper at first passed between operators. Falcon Eyes. Godfalcon. A name half respect, half myth. The kind of name that stuck whether she wanted it or not. And soon it spread. The next mission tested it further. A convoy ambush in hostile territory. Intelligence said enemy fighters were planning to strike a supply route critical to local allies. The SEALs were tasked with overwatch and rapid response. Again, Avery was placed on high ground, scope sweeping, the desert heat warping the horizon. The convoy rolled below, armored trucks crawling along a dirt road, vulnerable as insects under glass. Hours passed, nothing, just heat, dust, silence. Patience, always patience. Then a shimmer. She caught it before anyone else. A figure shifting behind rocks on a ridge, then another, then three more, shadows where there shouldn't be. Her voice was calm in the comms. Ambush, 2 o'clock, multiple hostiles, 10, no, 12. Rocket tubes confirmed. The convoy hadn't seen it. Neither had the team on the ground. But now they knew, because she'd seen. Orders flew. The SEALs maneuvered. The ambush collapsed before it ever began, enemy fighters scattering under sudden, precise counterfire. Through her scope, she watched the chaos unravel, her own rifle finding targets when necessary. But mostly she did what others couldn't, she saw. When the dust cleared, the convoy rolled on untouched. Back at base, even Ellis didn't speak against her. Instead, Cooper clapped her shoulder. You don't miss a thing, do you? She only shrugged, observation first, action second. The phrase spread. The men repeated it, some even adopted it. By the third mission, there was no more doubt. The whispers weren't whispers anymore. Godfalcon's watching. They meant it half in jest, half in awe. But for Avery, the name was a weight. A reminder that every shot, every decision, every moment of patience carried lives in its balance. And at night, when the barracks went quiet, the weight pressed heavier. Because while the SEALs learned to trust her eyes, her heart carried the letters from home. Jason's surgery delayed again, bills stacking, her mother's words fraying at the edges with exhaustion and fear. She would sit in the dark, rifle cleaned and reassembled, letters folded on her lap, whispering to herself like a prayer. Hold on, just hold on, I'm almost there. But the truth haunted her. Every mission dragged her deeper into a world where promises broke as easily as glass. And one day, she feared, she wouldn't just be aiming at shadows in windows or figures on ridges. One day, she would aim at a man who might not deserve it. And her patience, her greatest gift, would be tested in ways she wasn't sure her soul could endure. Why didn't he run? Through her scope, Avery watched the man standing in the courtyard, lantern light flickering across his face. He wasn't armed, not visibly. His hands were empty, yet every instinct screamed that something was wrong. The mission brief had been clear. A local warlord funding fighters, arming them with stolen weapons. Intelligence said tonight he would meet his suppliers inside that compound. The SEALs were staged for breach. Avery's job was to overwatch, to cover every angle, to ensure no threat slipped unseen. But this man wasn't in the intel packet. He stood still, too still, his posture rigid. She studied him, heartbeat steady, finger resting lightly on the trigger. Was he a lookout, a decoy, or just someone caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Her comms crackled, Blackwood's voice. Overwatch call it, is he a threat? The SEALs waited on her word. Lives hung in the balance. Her breath slowed. She searched every shadow, every line of the man's body, and then she saw it, the faint bulge under his vest, too flat for a weapon, too rigid. Explosives. Her chest tightened. He wasn't running because he didn't plan to leave. Her voice was low, certain. Suicide vest, take him out now. Permission came sharp, send it. She didn't hesitate. The rifle cracked. The man folded before his thumb could reach the detonator. But the explosion still came. From behind. A second bomber, unseen, hidden in the shadows. The blast ripped the rear wall of the compound, fire and dust swallowing half the team's entry point. Her scope blurred with smoke. Shouts filled the comms, men down. Her calm didn't break. She forced her scope steady, tracing through chaos. Fighters poured from the compound, weapons flashing. She marked targets, called movements, fired with precision that cut through confusion. But inside, something fractured. She had seen one bomber, she hadn't seen the second. And men she had sworn to protect now lay bleeding in the dust. The firefight dragged into eternity. Cooper's voice cut through comms, strained but alive. "We're pinned. We need cover, Falcon." Her jaw clenched. She shifted angles, her shots cracking like thunder. Each hostile that rose fell before they could fire. Slowly, painfully, the SEALs dragged their wounded free, retreating under her watchful glass. By dawn, the compound was rubble. The team limped back to exfil, 3 wounded, 1 dead. One less shadow among them. At base, the silence was heavier than gunfire. The medics worked. The rest sat in stunned stillness, sweat and soot caked on their faces. Ellis's voice broke the quiet, bitter, sharp. "You missed him, the second bomber. You had the glass, you didn't see him." Thompson's eyes flared. "Shut your mouth." But Ellis pressed on. "One dead because she didn't see, and you all call her Godfalcon." The word cut deeper than he knew. Because she'd already asked herself the same. That night she sat alone, rifle across her knees, hands trembling for the first time since training. She replayed it in her mind, the courtyard, the man, the vest. She had been right, but not enough. Her father's voice haunted her, "Keep the family together." How could she keep her family together when she couldn't even keep her team whole? A knock at the door broke her spiral. Cooper. He leaned against the frame, face pale, arm bandaged. "You saved more than you lost," he said softly. Her voice cracked. "One's too many." He nodded. "It always is, but that doesn't mean you failed. If you hadn't spotted the first, he would have taken us all. You know that, right?" She swallowed hard. "Knowing doesn't make it lighter." "No, it never does, but you carry it anyway. That's what this job is." He left her with the words, but they didn't lift the weight. They only gave it shape. Days later, Blackwood called her in. His tone was measured, his eyes sharp. "You're being tested in ways most operators never face. Not because you're weaker, because your strength threatens them." Her brow furrowed. "Threatens." "They look at you and see a mirror. You don't yell, you don't flex, you don't play the part, you just endure. And they hate that because deep down they know it's the real thing." She shook her head. "Ellis is right, I didn't see the second bomber." Blackwood's voice hardened. "None of us did. Intel didn't. Drones didn't. You can't see everything, but you saw the first. You saved lives. That's the balance of this work. Don't confuse guilt with truth." His words cut deeper than Ellis, because they forced her to admit something she feared. She would never see everything. She would never save everyone. And yet she would still have to try. The next mission came sooner than anyone wanted. A high-value target in the mountains. Rugged terrain, cold winds slicing through valleys, every approach a death trap. The SEALs hiked for hours, packs heavy, rifles ready. Avery took overwatch once more, eyes sweeping through glass. This time, she didn't wait for orders. Movement left ridge, 6 fighters, they're circling, trying to flank. The team adjusted, silent as shadows. Minutes later, 2 more east slope, coordinating with the flankers. Again they adjusted, slipping past unseen. Ellis muttered under his breath, maybe forgetting his mic was live. Godfalcon. Not mocking, not bitter, just acknowledgement. The word echoed in her mind as she pulled the bolt, chambering another round. Godfalcon. Not a name she wanted, but one she would carry. Because patience was her gift. And in a world where shadows killed as swiftly as bullets, maybe that gift mattered more than she could ever know. That night, as the team exfiltrated under starlight, the weight of her father's promise pressed heavier than the rifle on her back. She whispered into the cold, "Dad, I'm keeping them together. I'm trying." But even as she said it, she wondered. How many more would she have to lose before the promise broke her instead? Why did the child look back? Through her scope, Avery saw the boy pause at the edge of the alley, eyes wide, shoulders tense. He couldn't have been more than 10. Dust streaked his face. In his small hands he clutched a satchel too heavy for a child. And in that satchel, Avery knew wasn't bread. The intel had been clear. Insurgents were using children as couriers. Explosives hidden in bags slipped into convoys, markets, bases. A strategy as cruel as it was effective. Now she had seconds to decide. The comms crackled, Blackwood's voice calm but sharp. "Overwatch, call it, is he carrying?" Her breath stilled, her scope tightened. The strap of the satchel strained against the boy's small shoulder. The outline inside was wrong, too square, too solid. Yes, but it was a child. The seals were moving below, preparing to breach. If she stayed silent, the boy would walk straight into them. If she fired, she would carry that shot forever. Her father's voice echoed, "Keep this family together." What kind of family would she be keeping if she killed a child? Her mother's last letter burned in her chest pocket. "Jason's surgery is scheduled. We're out of time. We need you, Avery." The comms pressed again, sharper. "Falcon, call it." Her finger tightened against the trigger. The boy shifted, eyes flicking back as if sensing the unseen glass fixed on him. For a moment she swore he looked straight at her, across the distance, through the rifle scope. And then he turned, walking toward the seals. Her heart broke as she whispered, "Confirmed, explosives taking the shot." The rifle cracked. The boy fell. The satchel spilled. A dull metallic clatter spilled across the dirt, wires, charges, plastic explosive bricks. Silence filled the comms. Then Blackwood's voice, low, heavy, "Copy, target neutralized, package confirmed." But there was no relief in his tone. Only the weight of what they had just asked her to do. That night back at base, she sat alone in the dark, her rifle disassembled, pieces laid out like bones. Her hands moved automatically, cleaning, reassembling, but her mind replayed the moment over and over. The boy's eyes, the way he looked back. Ellis approached. For once there was no smirk, no venom. He stood silent for a long moment, then finally spoke. "I couldn't have done it," he admitted. His voice was low, almost broken. "Not a kid. I would have hesitated, and we'd all be dead." She didn't look at him, just kept wiping the bolt, slow, steady. "You didn't hesitate," he said, softer now. "That's why they call you Godfalcon, because you see what needs to be done, even when the rest of us can't." Her hands stilled. She closed her eyes, fighting the burn behind them. "I don't want to be Godfalcon," she whispered. But the name wasn't hers to choose anymore. The next morning, Blackwood called her into his office. His expression was grave, his tone stripped of command. "I reviewed the footage," he said quietly. "You made the right call, you saved the team." Her jaw tightened. "It doesn't feel right." "It never will." He leaned forward, eyes sharp. "This work, it isn't about right or wrong. It's about survival. You carry the weight so others don't have to. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you essential." She shook her head. "At what cost, sir? How many more shots like that before I don't recognize myself?" He didn't answer. Maybe there was no answer. Later, as the seals prepared for exfil, Cooper sat beside her. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. "You know what the guys are saying." She gave a humorless smile. "Do I want to?" "They're saying you're not just Overwatch, you're a shield. That without you none of us would make it home. That kid today," he stopped, swallowed hard. "You didn't kill him, Avery. The people who put that vest on him did. You just stopped them from killing us too." She wanted to believe him, needed to, but the boy's eyes still lingered, staring back through glass. That night she unfolded Jason's letter again. Her hands trembled. "Please, Avery, please tell me you're coming home." Her whisper broke in the dark. "I don't know if I'll make it back the same." For the first time since training, she cried. Silent, breaking tears she let no one see. And when the tears dried, she picked up her rifle again, because there was no choice, not anymore. The mission had changed her, marked her, but the war wasn't over. The SEALs had seen why they called her Godfalcon. And she had seen the cost of carrying that name. The next mission would come, they always did. And when it came, she knew one truth that chilled her deeper than any night in the surf. It wouldn't be the enemy she feared breaking her. It would be herself. Why didn't she feel relief? The transport plane roared beneath her, desert dust still clinging to her boots, rifle secured at her side. Around her, the SEALs sat in silence, each lost in their own ghosts. They had survived. The mission was over, for now. And yet Avery's chest ached, as if she'd left something unfinished behind. Her father's voice echoed like it always did. "Keep this family together." The war hadn't let her forget. It had only added weight. When the plane landed on American soil, she stepped onto tarmac that smelled not of cordite and dust, but of jet fuel and rain. The air felt cleaner, yet her lungs didn't ease. She carried sand in her hair, shadows in her chest, and the name that followed her even here. Godfalcon. The SEALs spoke it half with respect, half with something heavier. It wasn't a joke anymore. It was legend, growing beyond her control. Back in Nevada, the shop looked the same. Paint peeling. Dust settled deep in corners, but her father's tools still hung in careful rows, as if waiting for him to walk in. Her mother embraced her so tightly she thought they'd both break. Jason, thinner now, pale but smiling, stood leaning against the doorframe. "You came home," he whispered. She swallowed hard. "Yeah, I did." But even in his smile she saw the truth. He needed more than her presence. He needed surgery, a future, a chance she still wasn't sure she could give. The Navy's benefits covered what her father never could. Jason went in for surgery weeks later. Avery sat in the sterile hospital waiting room, hands clenched so tight they hurt, every sound dragging her back to battlefield radios, to shouted orders, to silence after gunfire. Hours stretched. Then the surgeon came out, mask lowered, eyes soft. He made it. The surgery went well. Her chest cracked open, relief pouring through in a way no mission success ever had. Tears slipped before she could stop them. For the first time in years, the promise to her father didn't feel like a chain. It felt like hope. But even hope had edges. Because at night she still woke to the sound of a rifle shot that never came from her weapon. She still saw the boy in the alley, the eyes that lingered before she pulled the trigger. She still heard Ellis's words, "You didn't see him." And in her darkest hours, she wondered if the nickname that clung to her was less a tribute and more a curse. Godfalcon. It sounded like something untouchable, something higher than human. But she wasn't untouchable. She was breaking, quietly, slowly. James Harrison visited one evening, shuffling into the shop with his old cane, his eyes still sharp despite the years. "You've changed," he said, simply studying her. She gave a bitter smile. "Everyone keeps telling me I saved lives, that I'm some kind of shield, but I don't feel like one. I feel like I left parts of myself over there." He nodded as if he'd expected nothing less. "You did. That's the truth no one writes in letters or medals. You don't come back whole. You come back carrying pieces of the ones who didn't. Her throat tightened. Then what do I do with it? He studied her a long moment. You live in a way that honors them, quietly, patiently, like you always have. Dignity doesn't shout, Avery. It doesn't demand recognition. It simply acts. The words settled in her chest, sharp and soft all at once. Weeks turned into months. Jason healed, slowly finding strength again. The shop limped along, debts still pressing but no longer crushing. Life moved, uneven but forward. The seals sent word sometimes. Cooper's letters brief but steady. Thompson's longer, filled with updates, gratitude, small reminders that she was still part of them even from a distance. Even Ellis, of all people, sent a single line, scrawled on a torn scrap. You saw what I couldn't. I won't forget it. She read it once, folded it, and never spoke of it again. Because some truths didn't need to be spoken. Sometimes she still took the rifle out into the Nevada hills, lying in the dust as the horizon bled into dusk. She'd breathe slow, steady, glass sweeping across empty land. And in those quiet hours, she felt closest to her father. Not because of the war, not because of the seals, but because of the patience he had planted in her as a child. The patience that had become her gift, her curse, her name. Godfalcon. But in those hills it wasn't about war, it wasn't about killing, it was about stillness, observation, life passing slow enough to see. And maybe that was enough. Because she understood now, keeping the family together wasn't about saving everyone, it wasn't about perfection, it was about endurance. Quiet, steady endurance in the face of storms. One evening, as the sun sank over Nevada and the sky burned gold, Jason asked her softly, "Do you ever regret it? What you did?" She didn't answer at first, just watched the horizon, the desert stretching endless before them. Finally she said, "Regret doesn't change the past. All I can do is live with it, carry it the best I can." He nodded, not pressing further, because he knew. And as night fell, Avery Morgan sat in silence, her rifle across her knees, her family alive beside her, her ghosts heavy but her promise intact. She was no hero, no legend, no untouchable falcon soaring above it all. She was a daughter, a sister, a soldier who endured. And sometimes that was enough. Because dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.